Are we?
Great.
This is so exciting. I think we're really live. I don't know
I was
how
like,
long. I
Danny?
was just staring blankly into space.
I was like, I'm new here. I don't know what's happening, but okay.
Hello to all of our listeners, and welcome to another episode of Dear Prudence Live. I am your host, Dear Prudence, also known as Danny M. Lavery, and with me are very patient friends of mine, Alyssa and Christina, who I love very much.
We love you too, Danny.
Hi, pals.
Hi. Happy to
I'm
be
excited that
here.
you're here.
Thrilled to be here, frankly.
I already told you this anecdote before, but I just want our listeners to know all day I was like, the one thing I need to do before the show tonight is trim my hair. And then I just kept pushing it back and pushing it back until I only trimmed the parts of it that you can see head on, and everything in the back is a mess. So I'm going to be answering questions without turning my head more than this or this, which I think will be an exciting challenge.
I support you.
I support you too.
Is
Are
it
you
as much of a challenge when you've already confessed that you've done it?
let's say it adds a layer of complexity to the challenge.
Cool. I love that
I've got
answer.
my head issues. Alyssa's got knitting. I don't know what you are hoping to accomplish throughout the session. Maybe it's just have a great time, show off a red lip.
I think that was kind of the plan.
Love to keep my hands busy.
Very important.
Great. Great. Well, I'll start with our first letter. It is, speaking of being busy, speaking of keeping your hands and eyes busy, the subject is journaled out. Dear Prudence, when I was 11, my mother had an affair with our neighbor and got pregnant. My sister was born a month after their wedding. I experienced a lot of emotional turmoil and journaled a lot. 20 years on, I assumed those journals had long been thrown out, but they were just stored in my mother's basement. Recently, my mother found them and read them, then called me crying because I had written some disturbing things like I wished she had died, or the baby had died, or that my stepfather would leave her. I was very angry and embarrassed. I tried to pass it off as my being a kid and that she shouldn't have read those journals. My mother told me she had a right to know, and how could I have never told her the truth about what I was feeling back then? I should have bit my tongue, but I responded, why would I? I was never going to be in the top 5 of your priorities, and I knew it then. I told her that in less than a year, she dragged me through an affair, a divorce, a remarriage, and a brand new sibling. She never asked if I wanted those things or what I wanted at all. She started to badmouth my father at that point, and I stopped her. This was about us, not him. I told her to throw away the journals, and we should forget she ever found them. My mother hasn't done this, and worse, she's now brought my stepfather in. He's made some ill-timed comments that I now know come from reading my old journals. It makes me feel ill. My sister has promised me that she will find them and burn them, the journals, not the parents, since she was planning to move back home. She's very angry on my behalf, but hasn't told our parents that she knows. She was also a very angsty teen, but she did art instead of writing. She understands, but our mother doesn't. I'm struggling to stop feeling betrayed. 6 months ago, I would have called my relationship with my mother and stepfather strong. Now I live on the other side of the country, and I feel more alone than I have since I was 11. Now what?
Ooh.
For the record, I don't think you were trying to pass this off as your being a kid. You were 11.
You were
You
a
were
kid.
literally a child. You were
Yeah, that wasn't
11
like a
years old.
sin.
Yeah, no, that was not like you in a PR room trying to be like, ooh, what's a good angle on this? I know, I'll say I was 11. You were 11. And you had a corresponding intensity of feeling as an 11-year-old.
Yeah, there's nothing about any of the things that you wrote in a journal that fall outside the realm of like a child going through something traumatic without a lot of guidance. Like you didn't hurt your sister, you weren't like sabotaging your mother's marriage. I think you need to
You were
absolve
11.
yourself completely of having like angry, panicked thoughts and writing them down.
Yes, agree wholeheartedly.
And so the
That's the
idea that
point
your
of
mom,
journaling.
yeah, it's so you don't like do those things.
Yeah.
And that your mom says, I have a right to know what you journaled when you were 11 and scared and unhappy and without resources is, she does not have that right. That's not a right that is in existence.
No.
Absolutely
Your
not.
mother is fully in the wrong here. Like, incredibly in the wrong.
What do you think about the sister's offer to go home, get rid of the journals, but I assume based on the letter, like also not tell the parents, oh, I know that you did this, just like burn it and hope that that fixes everything. Do you think it's like an option?
I mean, if you want the journals back in your care, which I think is totally fair based on what has occurred here, I think that's fine. It will not fix this situation, though. The box has kind of already been opened on that. So while that might be like a nice peace of mind moment for you to be like, oh, these are under my control, I have them, I don't know that just disappearing them is going to fix anything.
I am in favor of burning journals if you are done with them, though, because it feels good. So,
Yeah.
depends what you want out of that.
I would say I think the letter writer is still like not quite sure of what they want next, which makes a lot of sense. But mostly I think I would just say, don't struggle to stop feeling betrayed right now. This was a huge betrayal. Nothing about this was okay. It wouldn't have been okay if these were journals you were keeping now, but especially given that you were 11 and your mom's responding like as if these were like letters you sent mutual friends that, and you were all in your 30s at the time, as if you were her peer and not like a scared kid. I don't know. I mean, there's clearly like some more stuff there about the like, I've always known I'm not one of her top 5 priorities. So it may be that right now kind of the space you're able to have as a result of feeling so betrayed and being across the country is you can kind of like pause and reflect on like, has my mother ever made me feel like a priority? What kind of relationship do I actually want with her and my stepfather, especially given that they're not able to acknowledge that what they did was wrong?
Also, if therapy is an option, that could be something to look into now as an adult, because it doesn't seem like it was an option when the writer was 11, but if it is now, it could be worth looking into.
Right. Well, like even your younger sister, who was a baby at this time, is able to like hear about this and think like, I'm not mad that you had fantasies about you dying as a baby when you were 11 and panicked. Like, I know you were a kid. I know you now. So the fact that like your sister's being able to be more adult about this than your mother kind of speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know that anything particularly helpful is going to come with a conversation with your mother for probably some time, and probably like until you unpack some of that, like, was I ever a priority for her? Where did I fit into her life? And also like, deal with the betrayal of her reading your journals. That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the main advice I would have for this person at that point is, I don't know if she'll ever apologize. I don't know if she'll ever be willing to let it go. But I do think it would be a mistake to try to calm down about it and to try to apologize just to get your mother and stepfather to stop being cruel to you about this. I think that would make you feel so much more isolated. And so if you're feeling lonely right now, I get that. I hear that and I'm really sorry. But, I think therapy, talking to your friends, talking to your sister, people who will receive this news with like the right response, which is, holy shit, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Agree.
Don't read your kids' journals.
No.
Yeah, I guess just like make all of our listeners, make sure your journals are away from your parents.
But like they thought that they were gone, right? Like they had like they didn't even realize that they were down there, and
Yeah.
Anyways, good luck. I'm so sorry. Your mom's being an asshole. Let's move on to the next letter, which I love. I retained some of the language that felt very stonery to me because it just made me feel very affectionate. Christina, would you read that one?
I would happily. Let me just make sure I have it. Subject. I love my wife and she's not sure if she's going to divorce me over weed. Dear Prudence, my wife is a wonderful person and I'm really lucky to have her, but we're stuck on cannabis use. We've even gone to therapy over this. I've gone months at a time without using it and I don't feel addicted. But maybe that's what all addicts think. I'm not sure, and I would really appreciate an outside perspective. It's legal in our state, and I have a card for medical use due to anxiety. I smoke at home, alone, once or twice a week. In my 20s, I smoked more often, but now I like to spend an early Friday off work or a chill Saturday evening getting a little baked and enjoying cartoons. My wife, a superlative, amazing person, feels very strongly that marijuana is a terrible thing without any redeeming qualities. So we've come to an agreement on my use, which I'll follow for a while. And then I start to resent it, so I start using it, and then she notices, and here we are again. It's a whole thing, me trying to hide, but she's very smart, so she usually figures it out, and then, well, etc., etc. The last time, about 15 minutes ago, I asked her if she was thinking of divorcing me over this, and she said that she had thought about it, but hadn't made up her mind. I love my wife. Why do I keep doing this? Friend.
Yeah. I want to move away from the question of, am I an addict? I don't think it's especially helpful to use the lens of addiction when it comes to something like weekly marijuana use.
I agree.
The question to me is really more like, when you make these agreements with your wife, are you doing it because this actually seems like a workable compromise, or are you just saying yes because you don't like fighting and you want to say the answer you think she wants to hear, and then when you're like, this actually doesn't work for me, you resent it and then you don't do it, which is a not uncommon personality trait, I think, among stoners. And like, as a long ago former stoner myself, I definitely resonate with that part that's like, yeah, sure, anything you want. And I'm like, later, like, that's harsh. I don't know.
That's really killing my vibe, frankly. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that there's not going to be like a ton helpful trying to like decipher via this letter. If the letter writer is an addict, it does, like, this letter doesn't raise any red flags around marijuana use for me, but like, I'm not qualified in those matters. I do think the problem is you're like constantly just being like, yes, I'll say the thing that needs to happen, so this annoying thing that's happening to me, aka this fight, will stop, and then everything will be fine. But of course everything's not fine, because the issue is still, right there in the form of you getting high secretly.
Yeah, so I think it might feel like at that point, especially if you're scared, like the answer is, okay, I'm really just going to tell her because I don't want to lose her. I'm done forever. And then that might feel good in the moment. But if the issue is that on some level you think that her views on weed are unreasonable and you never talk about that with her because you're so afraid of losing her, then I just worry that this will happen again. And without trying to come down too hard against the wife either, I think it would also be really okay for you to say, like, my wife hates weed. I don't hate weed. I don't think it's evil. I don't think it has no redeeming value. I'm willing to talk to her about, like, are there ways in which, like, I don't know, like if you're doing it every Friday off of work and Saturday evening, it may be that she feels like, well, when the weekend comes around, I don't really get to connect and you're kind of checked out. That would seem like a real thing to talk about. That would be frustrating, especially when you combine it with, you're always saying you're not going to do it. And then I see that you're high and I'm like, well, we're not going to be able to have like the kind of conversation I want for the next 12 hours or
right.
That's not how long it lasts, but you know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
Alyssa, how's your knitting?
It's going great. Just
what would you do if you were in this situation?
Well, that's maybe a different question than the advice I would give someone else.
What's your goal?
Fair.
What would you do, and then what's your advice?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I would be this person writing in just being like, yeah, I keep saying I'm going to stop, but I don't want to. And I think that she's being unreasonable. So now I'm writing this letter to you because I'm avoiding confrontation. It's very possible I could end up in that situation. But also, I think it's very silly and outdated and historically kind of racist to, like, all of the stuff around marijuana has been, like, the messaging has been kind of racist. So I would also be interested in interrogating where some of this attitude is coming from. Because it is 2020 and I just feel like having a really strong feeling that cannabis is the devil is very confusing to me. But again, I live in Philadelphia, so
Yeah,
I don't know anyone like this.
I feel like if the issue is like she's in recovery, or like, you know, she comes from a background where like a lot of her like her parents or past relationships, substance abuse was a real issue, and like she strongly prefers, you know, no drug use. That would be, I think, different. But this approach of just like, I think marijuana is terrible, there's nothing good about it, anyone who uses it should think of themselves as an addict, which isn't outright stated here, but seems to be something that the letter writer is picking up. It's just like, I would encourage the letter writer to push back a little bit on that, which is not the same thing as saying like, no, there's nothing about the way that I smoke weed that's like difficult for our relationship, or that involves some version of telling you what you want to hear and then doing what I want anyways. But maybe like if you're this freaked out and you're this scared, maybe you can have the conversation of, I think we've been dancing around this for a while because I've been so afraid of your disapproval and so convinced that I must be doing something wrong all the time that I haven't actually made the case that I want to make, which is I don't want to lie to you, or I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And I also don't want to lose this relationship. So part of what that means is I want to tell you that like, it's important to me that we can find a way to respectfully disagree about weed. And I don't know what kind of compromise might be possible. It may be challenging, but you don't have to concede that like, if you like it and if you want to use it weekly, that means you're addicted or like enthralled to it, you know?
Right. Yeah. It made me wonder like, oh, no, AK, go. I talked earlier. It's your turn, friend.
I was just
Put that knitting down.
They also mentioned that they have a card for medical use due to anxiety. So, like, it's being used for medicinal purposes, whether or not this person's wife, who may or may not be a physician, who's to say, thinks it's good for anxiety. It's, you know, it's legal. They have a card. Like, this isn't about marijuana. They need to have like an actual conversation and figure some of this out, because
that's actually exactly what I was going to say. So it's fine that you got there first, but like, have you talked to her about like how it helps with your anxiety? Because that's a real thing. She might think it's less evil.
I think my like last thought there is just I don't know what kind of compromises are possible between the two of you, but I think whatever it is, it needs to start with you not feeling as though you have to hide your marijuana use. I think the thing there is like, I'm willing to have any kind of conversation about this that you want. I'm willing to be like not high when we have those conversations. I have no interest in getting high around the clock every day. But I think one thing that will help is like, I'm going to say like, I'm going to be getting high Friday afternoon. If you need to like fight with me about that, let's have a fight. If you want to make different plans so we're not hanging out while I'm smoking, we can talk about that. But I'm not going to treat it like it's shameful or furtive or wrong. It's just something that we disagree about. Also, someone wants to know, Alyssa, what you're knitting.
I'm knitting a big shawl that's supposed to be for my sister's Christmas present, but you know, it's going to be for next Christmas.
So early.
Well, it was more of a after this Christmas passed, I said, hey, would you like one of these? I didn't want to knit you one if you would hate it, but and so she said
they
yes.
do take a very long time.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
It's true. The last one took me 4 months. This one, there's been some distractions along the way, so it's been a little longer, but.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I saved this question specifically for you to read.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Subject. Harry Potter fan no more? Dear Prudence, a big part of my identity has always centered on my love for the Harry Potter books. I've joined online communities, made real-life friends, even decorated my house with a Harry Potter theme. To me, the books always represented so much of what this world is missing: the power of good over evil, love over hate, justice over injustice. The books help me maintain my delicate mental health in times of upheaval and despair. However, J.K. Rowling's recent comments about trans folks have left me reeling. My closest friend in the community Gina, has said, "We cannot continue our friendship if I continue to be as obsessed with Harry Potter as I am. Other friends have threatened to cut me out of their lives for continuing to be in the Harry Potter communities. They say that continuing to support Harry Potter shows tacit support for Rowling's transphobic views. I'm so confused. What do I do?"
Alyssa, you mentioned earlier that you might have some book recommendations.
Yes. So I obviously, like a lot of people, grew up loving Harry Potter, and I've read those books a bajillion times. However, there are also a lot of other really good books in the world whose authors have not been making really hurtful and harmful comments publicly as a children's author. N.K. Jemisin comes to mind. Favorite author, she wrote the Broken Earth trilogy, which won 3 straight Hugos. But
does Hugos for straight people.
Well, as I was saying that, I was like, oh, should have said consecutive, because those books are they're not super straight. Like, they are very much not heterosexual or cis. There's trans people in them, although, it's a high fantasy, so it's everything's a little different terminology wise, but there's just like a lot of authors who do support trans people. And, I personally have moved away from Harry Potter because of Joe's hate, essentially. In the last couple of years.
Unqualified garbage. Yeah.
Really not anything else she's been awful about it, and it's been really hurtful and harmful. And it does kind of, change how I feel about the books. And I make this joke a lot because it's not really a joke, but the Chronicles of Narnia are very old books by a man with a lot of issues, but he is dead. And so there are no new issues that keep coming up. This is it. This is all we have to grapple with. It's in the books and it's in his other notebooks, whatever, but that's it. I'm not saying you only have to like dead authors. That would be weird, but like, there's just, there's so many other books. We can read more books.
And as I think you're like getting to with the C.S. Lewis stuff, the question here is not really, am I allowed to sometimes reread the copies of the books I already own? That would be a really different question. This is, I've organized the majority of my life around this young adult children's book series. And is it possible to organize my life around other things? Or rather, are these people who are asking me to reconsider some of this, like, do they have a point? Are they just trying to like punish me? Are they just trying to make life hard for me? I feel like the kind of implication was like, they've helped me maintain my mental health in times of upheaval and despair. There's a little bit of a like implication there of like, but this is the thing I need to be well. And I want to gently push back against that idea, which is not to say like you shouldn't seek out comforting reads when you're going through a difficult time. But I think if there are other ways that you need to take care of your mental health, whether that be like, the sort of classics, right? Like seeing a doctor, seeing a therapist, considering medication, journaling, taking the occasional walk, getting enough sleep, drinking water, investing in healthy relationships, et cetera, seeking out lots of different books to read, some of which could be, and again, I want to say this graciously and not as a sort of like dig, but like books written by adults for adults. That's not saying you can't ever read a young adult novel ever. Of course you can, but books for adults, I think, often have a real value to them. And like, if your goal is to, think about the power of good over evil, love over hate, justice over injustice, that's a lot of books.
Yeah,
many.
You're not going to be starved for choice if you want to read books, especially children's books about the triumph of love over hate. That's most of them. There is a wealth of literature on that subject. So, I'm not going to tell you like, you're not allowed to think about Hufflepuff House ever again, or the thought police will come for you. But like, you have so many options to add, and you do have people in your life who are telling you like, this woman's using like her platform and her billions of dollars to like go after trans people. That's not something that I can overlook or take out of my like day-to-day life. And so, you know, I don't want to say like your friends are all right to be giving you like an ultimatum this moment, but they're telling you that this is painful for them. And I do think, you know, there are other ways to seek these things out than to say like, no, I have to keep this Harry Potter couch. I don't know if there's Harry Potter couches.
There's probably.
I'm certain there are.
I would bet there are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with both of you because you're both my wonderful, brilliant, smart friends who I love dearly. But what really stuck out to me was, you know, you have friends who are trans who are telling you in pretty clear terms that this hurts their feelings, this hurts them, and that her, again, vocal horribleness to trans folks is not good. And I think that you owe it to them to at least consider perhaps organizing your life around like a different principle of living that is maybe not a book for children.
Yeah, and just again, like, it sounds like, especially with a lot of the decorative stuff, I don't know if the communities involve like formal fan communities or like trips to her various like theme parks or what have you. But like this could also very much be like a hobby is not quite the right word, but I'll use it. This could be putting lots of money in her pocket, and that's a big thing as well. So yeah, I don't want to say like you have to strike it out of your heart, you have to burn everything that you've ever owned, but you know, listen to your friends, consider if there are ways in which you can seek out in the real world groups, organizations that support justice over injustice. That's not just something that happens in fiction, that happens right now in real time. And you could potentially do things that help real, live, non-fictional people while also enjoying fiction.
Yeah, fiction rocks. Definitely enjoy it.
We love fiction.
Yeah, so I think, you know, what's being asked of you is not set all your stuff on fire, pretend you never read the books, so much as your friends are asking you to consider reinvesting some of the time and energy that you've poured into this relentlessly for years into something else. And I think that's possible. I think you can do that without in any way harming your mental health or your well-being. I keep seeing the subject line of this next one as in the tune of the Billy Idol song. And again, this is like, there are two letters where I want to kind of like promote like courage. You can do this. I think it's my turn to read it. So the subject is help getting out of cop wedding. Dear Prudence, my partner comes from a large, welcoming family and has more cousins than he can count. His parents live nearby and host a lot of family events, so we've gotten to know many of them quite well over the years. One of the cousins is a cop in our city, which has a pretty egregious history of police brutality. My partner does not really like that cousin and has a lot of qualms about him as a person, and he is deeply uncomfortable with his cousin's line of work. We are in favor of police abolition. When my partner's mom sent us updates from that cousin on the, quote, front lines during the recent protests in our cities that we'd been a part of, we couldn't stop wondering whether he'd been one of the cops who used tear gas on us. We just got an email that he's getting married this fall. My partner's mother clearly expects us to go. We do not want to. Besides not really being fans of him personally, we just can't imagine going to a wedding that will be full of cops. This isn't a political stance per se. We're not boycotting him nor demanding his resignation. We just wouldn't be comfortable. It doesn't feel like declining a wedding invitation is a great opportunity to engage someone in a deeper discussion about the role of police in our communities either. We are really puzzled as to how we can not go without pissing off my partner's mom and aunt. How does one graciously decline such a familial obligation when there is no inconvenience or excessive cost to hide behind, or even other plans because of the pandemic? Please help us get out of this cop wedding.
Ooh, boy.
One thing that really struck me about this letter was the like kind of almost casual aside of like, we were at a protest, we got tear gassed, and like this clear moment between you and your partner where you're like, we know what our values are, we know what we're risking right now, we're gonna go put our bodies on this particular line, and like do what we know to be right. And then here it's like, it's just evaporated. That clarity, that certainty of purpose, that confidence is just gone.
Yeah, it somehow becomes like temporal, and it's not about politics. It's suddenly like not, it's a conversation we want to have without offending anyone, which is, I hate to tell you, going to be pretty impossible to do. I'm sorry about that, but that's like kind of just the way it shakes out sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely both political and personal. I'm not quite sure why the letter writer is backing off of that. I mean, I am. It's because they're afraid of family conflict. And so they would like to pretend that it's just like, oh, we just kind of rather not on balance. We are for police abolition, and we go to protests and endure tear gassing in order to promote that. And also, we don't like him as a person. We think he's a bad guy personally. And we think that he's probably part of police brutality, but it's not political. Like, that's not adding up for me.
No, it doesn't at all.
Not at all. No.
So what do you do with that?
I mean, I think you accept the fact that you're going to piss off your partner's mom and aunt or compromise your values.
Yeah, those are your two options.
Those are your
two
options. Also, just as an aside, the idea that there's going to be a wedding in the fall during a pandemic.
That was my other thought, was I don't think you're going to a wedding in the fall.
There shouldn't be a wedding in the fall. And also, you shouldn't go to a cop wedding specifically when you are a police abolitionist who doesn't even like the cousin.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you say we're not boycotting nor are we demanding his resignation. Why aren't you demanding his resignation? You're a police abolitionist.
I'm demanding his resignation from here.
You think you've probably recently deployed tear gas against people protesting police brutality. Why aren't you demanding that he resign? You should demand that he resign. That doesn't mean you have to follow him around for the rest of his life, but you should say at least once, I think your job is evil. I think you should quit, and then make amends for the rest of your life. I will not go to your wedding. I'm sure that sounds like I could never say that in a million billion years. And my partner's mom would be so mad. And when your mom is mad at you, you can't let your mom be mad at you, because what if your mom was mad at you?
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes moms get mad.
Sometimes you say to your partner's mom, though, we don't know if this was the cop that tear gassed us. Yeah. And so we would like to not go to the wedding. And also, we would like him to resign.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should be trying to hide your police abolitionism to your family. And the mom in question clearly doesn't have any qualms about sharing her beliefs on the matter with you. She's sending you footage and calling it the front lines, as if it's a war between cops and like civilians. So she has none of your reservations.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to like kind of fudge your way through this one, I think.
Yep. There really isn't.
You don't have to scream it, but you do have to say it, and you have to be prepared for them to be upset.
You do. I think the only thing I would say is, because you are writing this and not your partner whose mother it is, like, you do need to have a conversation with your partner about like what this conversation will look like, what like their relationship with their mother is, how that's going to change, how your relationship with their mother might change. Like, you should be pretty clear with your partner on that front, and like, so you guys are coming from the same place. But yeah, you are making a political choice. You made the political choice to literally get tear gassed. So like, have an uncomfortable conversation. It won't hurt as much, I assure you.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful. You do not have to do this tomorrow, but you should say like, I want to do this within the next couple of weeks. How do we get there? Right now, I feel so scared of the possibility of your mom getting mad. I want to pretend that we're just busy that day. So how do I get from there to moral clarity, personal confidence, certainty that we're doing the right thing, the ability to say what we believe is right without going like hog wild on our partner's mom? Like, I get that you don't want to be like, and you're, the worst person in the world, and I will fight you to the death. You can find ways to say this that also are in line with like your principles in terms of how you want to talk to somebody. But you have this courage within you. You do.
You do.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I get it. It's hard to confront your family members when they are doing bad things. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, bar none. It was very, 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 very hard. And I'm still sad about it all the time. And I'm so glad that I did it. And I could not have lived with myself otherwise. We're getting further afield. We should probably move on to the next question, but I don't say this lightly.
Proud of your courage,
I know
too.
how hard it is. Also,
it is hard.
As you know, I keep thinking it's Father's Day. I've been thinking that like every 6 weeks. So like every weekend, I'm like, okay, it's going to be Father's Day. You're going to be so upset. Get ready. And then I'll like check my calendar and it's like, oh, it's just a Sunday. It's not about Dad. And I'm like,
nobody knows when Father's Day is.
It's this Sunday. And now I'm like, honestly, I'm kind of wiped out. I'm just like,
good.
Honestly, kind of a brilliant tactic on your part.
Great work. Snaps for Daddy.
Christina, would you read our next letter, please?
I would love to. Subject, familyed out. Dear Prudence, my husband of 3 years, Greg, is one of 5 children. Our 3 children have a huge group of cousins, all of whom live in the same state, though we're the furthest flung. Greg and I always wanted kids, but didn't realize how many cousins they'd end up having, and never really took that into consideration. Turns out our expectations are wildly mismatched. Greg would love for the cousins to basically grow up as siblings, play dates every weekend, annual extended family vacations, rotating parents as babysitters trips. I grew up seeing my cousins a few times per year, and mostly interacted with my own nuclear family, which would be my preference. Every week we get invitations for cousin time, which turns into a fight between me and Greg because I'd prefer to spend our weekends just us. Then throw in the judgment and derision from his side of the family. I think they view me as cold because I don't want to spend all my time with them, and it just heightens the tension. Our kids are all younger than 6. I don't want things to be like this forever. Coronavirus was a brief respite as we were all socially distanced, but now things have started up again. How can we find a compromise? Wow, that last sentence is troubling.
It's right up there with the wedding of like, did we find a vaccine and I forgot?
Not to my knowledge, no.
No, we didn't, just to be clear. No. It's still very bad out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think cousins are lovely. I have a bunch. I love them a lot. I kind of wish I had more opportunity to see them. I don't know that I would have been clamoring to see them every weekend and multiple family vacations a summer as a child. And I think you are well within your right to want to have some family time that doesn't involve traveling. Also, that's terrible. But this is like a conversation you just like have to have with your husband. Like, I don't.
Yeah, this one's sadly not as easy as like, don't go to this wedding.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like, well, this isn't really something that you're like, it's my way or the highway guy. Like, I think it'll help you accept that you are not going to be able to replicate the version of the family that you grew up in, where you can say like, I'd actually like our kids not to really care about their cousins and see them twice a year. Well, they have more cousins than you did. Like, it's a different family. I don't think you can like make that decision unilaterally. So you can absolutely say like, I'd like us to have, let's say, 2 weekends a month where we're here. Like, find a compromise there. You can definitely find a compromise, but I don't think you're going to get, nor do I think you should ask for, I would like us to scale back so far that the kids kind of forget they have cousins.
There's such a huge range between a few times a year and every weekend. There's like that's like
so
3 to 52. There's a lot of numbers between 3 and 52.
At least 10.
At least 10. We're not math majors, but it's like at least 10. And I feel like there's definitely a compromise in there somewhere where you can prioritize the cousin time, but also be like, this weekend, just us.
Yeah, especially because it's like every week we get invitations and it always turns into a fight. And so it's like you just react to it as it comes, but you know that these invitations come every week.
They're going to keep coming.
I think the solution is to say, like, let's not wait until Friday to act like, oh my God, we got an invitation. What are we going to do? Like, let's talk about it on Tuesday and say, like, let's look at the month ahead. let's find a number we can both live with. It might take a little while for you to come down from all of them and for me to come up from none, but there are many numbers in the middle. And then like, once we have that number decided upon, then we can like pick which ones to say yes and no to without treating it like a surprise. I realize so much as we're answering this that none of us have children at all. And so I'm just like, just talk to your partner and say no to your in-laws and your kids will be fine. I have plants, you know, I don't have kids.
I mean, I do think if you talk to your partner and say no to your in-laws, your kids will be fine. Like, I think of things you can do to both your partner and your in-laws. Those are things that will make your kids fine. I do understand that it could be more complicated in ways that I perhaps don't get, as I, again, famously have no children. But yeah, you have to have a conversation about it, and you have to stop pretending that it's going to be a surprise. It's just never going to be a surprise.
Yes.
And I think you can also, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as an always thing, but like you can occasionally say like, this weekend, I'm going to like hang out with some of my friends and get caught up around the house. If you and the kids want to go, but occasionally carve out time for yourself. You're like, I'm going to stay home. I don't think you should go to that well too often, because that could really turn into like, let's just have separate lives every weekend where you're off with your family and I just do my thing. But you can do that sometimes.
Yeah, I think you're well within your rights to do that sometimes. I also want to say that my favorite part of this letter is that like they didn't take into consideration when having kids how many cousins they were going to have. And I just like don't, is that again, famously no children, is that a thing?
I wouldn't know. Again, famously no children, no siblings who I'm in contact with. So
good talk.
Not really a question that I'm ever going to have to deal with.
The line just really surprised me.
Our lack of expertise. And Alyssa, it's you, right, for the last one?
Yes. Subject, not a joiner. Dear Prudence, I'm a Black mid-level manager at a nonprofit, Helping Inc., that mostly serves low-income people of color. Our organization is pretty diverse, and in general, I've been happy here. However, Helping has truly fumbled the response to the death of George Floyd and others and the ensuing civil unrest. There were a few half-hearted emails, one awkward speech, and weird attempts at outreach, all done by white senior managers. About 7 Black mid-managers have co-written an email with demands of Helper's senior leadership, but I don't want to co-sign the letter. My family is in a financially precarious situation due to COVID, and I absolutely cannot lose my job. Though I generally agree with the letter's contents, I don't want to be seen as part of a block with people I don't always agree with just because of my race. I am also closer to some of the senior leadership than my colleagues, and I'd prefer to approach them one-on-one rather than escalating with a group letter. But I also don't want to be seen as a traitor or something. Should I join the letter for optics' sake? Should I give the senior leaders a heads up before the letter arrives? Is there a third solution?
I can start.
My friend, as a fellow Black person, I can assure you that just because you do or do not sign a letter does not mean that your company of senior leadership will not see you as a Black person like the other Black people in your company. Because you are, I'm going to use famously here, a Black person. So I would caution you to think a little more widely about why you are eager to run to senior leadership rather than have a conversation with your Black colleagues about this letter. That's just like kind of the first thing that comes to mind for me. It seems like you might have some work to do untying some things around your feelings around your Blackness and Blackness as a whole entity. Just, that's my piece.
It seems clear. It seemed clear in this letter that the fear or the anxiety or the worry that was sort of the most salient was the fear of losing proximity to these senior managers. Mm-hmm. Like the implication of like, knowing how it sounds like an all-white upper management that is considering itself some version of like well-meaning or right on would potentially respond to a letter like this, which would be like, well, why didn't you just come to me personally?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a real thing. That may very well be one response that some or all of them may have, especially given their track record of like dropping a flower pot down a flight of stairs.
Great visual.
Given that these emails, speeches, and outreach have all been done on a public scale, I think it's fair to say I did not approach you privately because this is not a private issue. It's not a testament to your character as an individual human being. This is a matter of company policy, how our clients see us, how the populations that we serve see us, and it needs to be held to public account. So that is, I think, one good reason for sending a letter as a body, rather than just knocking on people's doors and saying like, hey, you and I need to have it out about the emails that you sent around. Does that strike you as reasonable? Like the whole public action, public reaction thing?
Yeah, that absolutely seems very, very fair and reasonable to me.
Yeah. And like Christina said, talk to your colleagues maybe first before or instead of going to the white senior leadership, because generally the people in charge are less likely to have your best interests at heart than perhaps your coworkers, though it may depend. But generally seems like a safer bet to talk to your coworkers first.
I think that's really useful, Alyssa, because I think the thing to bear in mind here is like, you don't have to agree with these colleagues all of the time. And you say that you don't. That's fine. You're absolutely allowed to disagree with them often. You don't have to be in perfect harmony with them. You don't have to consider them your best friends. You don't even have to sign this letter. If you decide either that you think that senior management will retaliate in a plausibly deniable way, that happens, that's real. If you didn't want to risk it, and I think you just told your colleagues, like, I think the letter is good, I do support it, I'm too worried about possible retaliation, I think that they would understand. I think if you told them that honestly, they would not necessarily be like, we hate you. But even if you do make that choice, I think, that question about should I give those senior leaders a heads up, you are a mid-level manager. So your interests lie with your fellow mid-level managers in this situation. If you act as if your interests are the same as senior management, that will benefit senior management and that will hurt you.
Yeah.
Because you're not senior management.
You are not.
You don't have that job. Mm-hmm. So you without bringing it all back around to Marxism, like you cannot have your boss's interests above yours and your fellow workers. I mean, you're all mid-level managers. I don't mean to take that too far, but yeah.
No, I totally agree. And again, I think, obviously not wanting to lose your job when you are like the primary person who brings in money for your household is more than enough reason to not to want to sign a letter. I just don't think that you need to run and inform senior management that this letter is coming, or that you have like some intel on like what's happening, because it doesn't really sound like much aside from the fact that there's a letter happening, and B, because again, they don't have your interests at heart, and like this will not.
And they've already fucked this up, right? Like,
yeah,
they've already demonstrated they don't know what to do.
They're not crushing it.
Yeah.
And this like will not help them think of you as like one of the good ones. Like that's not gonna happen. So don't do that, please. Like, please, I beg you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to leave this a lot of room to say, like, if you don't want to letter and only because you're afraid of repercussions at work, that's a good enough reason not to do it. You don't have to make this the perfect company. If all your goal here is like, I want to take care of my family and myself and then not go out of my way to harm anyone else,
totally fine.
You can live with that. That's fine. But you don't even say that like the letter's awful or like the letter's going to get them all fired. It's just like, here's what you should do. And so I don't think there's anything in it that's so inflammatory that you need to warn your bosses. And I definitely think if you don't want to be seen as a traitor, not signing it's not going to make them say like you're a traitor. I mean, maybe some of them will, maybe I don't know, but like just not
Right.
signing it and being honest
Not
about
signing
it
it.
is not betrayal.
No. Talking to the managers, again, would be betrayal.
Yeah, there would definitely, I think, risk retaliation and isolation at work. And it wouldn't, people who do that sort of thing, people who like run and tell stories, often are disliked just as much by the people they told the story on as the person they told it to. They'll be like, I'm glad you told me, but privately they're going to be like, you're not.
But what will you tell
You're not
about me
trustworthy.
to somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good luck. That's a difficult place to be.
Yeah, that's roof stoof.
Yeah, and honestly, if all you want to do is say like, this is my job, this is my work, I want to leave it behind me when I walk out the door. I don't want to try to make this the perfect company or improve it. I just want to like get my paycheck and get out of here. That's legitimate.
Very, very legitimate.
The last written letter, which means that if you two are feeling up for it, depending on how your knitting is going, depending on how your headphones are feeling, you can answer a couple of questions from anybody who's listening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in.
How's the knitting going, by the way? How much progress have you made?
I've made some progress. This is more of a one stitch at a time, and then you surprise yourself by saying, oh, look how far I've come in like a week or so. Not an hour.
Fair enough.
More than 3, but less than 52, would you say?
Yes, somewhere between 3 and 52.
Gonna be my new go-to for everything.
I'm excited. Okay, I see that a question has come in. I'm going to read it to you both now, if you're amenable.
Yeah.
Dear Prudence, I'm from a multiracial family and I am mixed race Hispanic. Given the ongoing conversations about race and Black Lives Matter, I've recently been more outspoken than usual about my opposition to racism, police brutality, and the current administration. A recent post on the subject has landed me in hot water with some relatives, which I mostly expected, but unexpectedly, one of whom is my mom, who is white. She thinks I used the word white in a derogatory manner and likened it to a family member who calls people of my ethnicity by a slur. I kindly told her to check herself, and she is now, quote, pretending that I didn't say that to her, and has deleted her social media in a fit of pique, insisting that social media is the real problem here, since this was a post on social media. I don't even know how to begin to have this fight. Any advice on dealing with her or any of my other family members?
Well, as someone with a white mom, two people with white moms are amazing. What a question for us. I would say a great time to have that fight is not on social media. Not because I think social media is the problem, but because it's your mom. And so there's other ways usually that you could have that conversation that might be a little less fraught or public.
Yeah, gonna agree with that. Also, this is going to be a really uncomfortable, could also be just like a fight that lasts for like a while. And while I can't insist that you have that fight, I do think if your mother, who is white, is saying that calling white people white is similar to a family member, which is bonkers, that calls people of your ethnicity by a racial slur, which again, just want to say, that's bad and bonkers. Like a fight probably should come out of this. It doesn't have to be right now, but like there's going to be a fraught, uncomfortable conversation that like you're just going to need to have at some point, if only to tell that family member to stop calling people of your ethnicity a racial slur, which someone should have done for you a long time ago.
Yes, I strongly agree with all of that.
Yeah, that was really painful. Do you have any like recommendations on like if the letter writer is kind of feeling right now like I don't have some of the energy to take on this whole side of my family right now? What would you suggest in the meantime of like if you wanted to take a few days or even a few weeks to sort of like reground themselves and look for support elsewhere in their life? Like what would be some of your top tips for that? Because this is the big one, right? This is your mom. This isn't just like a
Yeah.
cousin whose wedding you don't want to go to. This is your mother.
I think what has been successful for me in the past is finding people that, usually other white people that my mother knows and trusts, to kind of have some of these starter conversations around why being white is not a racial slur. Though, to be clear, my mother has never said that. Thank God.
Mine neither.
But having kind of like using your trusted white allies, like this is a really good moment for that, to make them do a little bit of that work for you. So you are not taking on the burden of not only like being the racial explainer, but being the racial explainer to your mother, which is like so fully fraught and exhausting. I can't even fathom having to do that all by yourself. Like you shouldn't have to do that by yourself. So I think that is what has been helpful for me in the past. It's just like find some folks who you know whose politics work, your mother can talk to. Have her start there. A real basic conversation about like what we mean when we say whiteness.
Like an article or two from a source that you trust. If she's open to reading a short article, sometimes it's hard to be like, just read this entire book and then you'll understand. But like sometimes a short article is a helpful starting point, and it feels less personal because it's coming from like this third explaining party that isn't their child. Which again, the way my mom and I have conversations is I walk into the room and something is on the television and I hate it and I boo at it. So like different kinds of relationships.
Right.
But
That.
yeah, just and having, other friends of color. If you have other friends of colors with white family, that is something that you can complain about with them. I think a lot of us have had maybe not that exact experience, but adjacent experiences. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks to feel like, your family is not a safe place for you to have these feelings.
Yeah. The only thing that I would add to that is right now it's sort of like, I don't even know how to deal with this because your mom's response was so outrageous. Like you said to your mom after she said, when you say white, that's like when your uncle calls you a racial slur. And you said to her, you need to check yourself right now. That was a very restrained, respectful response. Like you were as polite as imaginable. And her response to that was, I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. And then to delete every social media account that she has. So part of it is also like, oh, my mom just threw a hissy fit. My mom just behaved like a 5-year-old.
Like an actual child.
Yeah. And like, it sounds like maybe also some of my other relatives are like egging her on or like siding with her. And that can be really hard. And it's like, wow, my mom just behaved like a child. And a lot of people are in her corner. And I don't know how to handle like 6 angry, unreasonable, threatened white people at the same time.
Yeah.
So like giving yourself space there makes a lot of sense to me.
Yep.
But reminding yourself, I don't think you have anything to apologize for. Like you didn't say anything inappropriate. You didn't like then go too far and say something that you knew would hurt her because you were hurt. You can really stand in reality and say like, I'm not going to pretend I didn't say that. We don't have to hash it out tomorrow, but I said it and I'll say it again if I have to.
Exactly.
You said the right thing.
Yep. You absolutely did.
And I guess beyond that, like I hope you're able to like marshal whatever resources you need to have that conversation. But if you also just need to say like, I'm going to let her burn her energy, I'm going to focus on me for a little while. And like, if we revisit it later, we can revisit it later. But like, you don't have to rush after her and calm her down.
Yep.
Nope.
She just pulled down all her blocks and was like, look at what you did. Just blocks.
Yep.
It's just blocks.
Part of me would be tempted to be like, how's your social media hiatus going? Like, you must just be feeling so rested. But,
yeah, I get that impulse. I also would have it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just my own, like, we're coming up on Father's Day. So my like werewolf energy is just,
right.
It's like, I want to say more and more ridiculous things that I'm not going to. Oh, my friends, your faces
My
make me so
friend.
happy. Do you want to tell the
Your
people where you
faces
got
make
your
me happy.
jumpsuits? Because you're both wearing the same jumpsuits, and I feel that
Oh.
people should know.
Uniqlo?
Yeah, that's where we both got them. I own them in every color. They are available. I
Okay,
They're
purchased
on
the blue
sale this
one.
weekend.
I purchased the blue about 2 weeks ago, and then I wore it every day for like almost 6 days. And I said, I think I just need all of them. So that's now I have green and black.
The
Wonderful.
combination of like stylishness and oh, it's been 6 days and I haven't changed my clothes. It's very like the three of us. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, that's really my whole like. Sure, I got up, showered, put a full face of makeup on every day, but I put the same jumpsuit on.
listen, I only cut the front of my hair because that's the only part of my head that's real.
Yeah, science proves
Whatever
that.
works.
Everything else
Whatever
is
works.
pretend head. Friends, you're wonderful. I love you both so
You're
much. Thank
wonderful.
you for helping solve everyone's
Of
problems.
course.
I'm so
Love
sorry
you.
that so many of our letters today were just about awful family members.
Kind of a theme.
Thank you all for tuning in. And we need to stick around. I just saw that Faith was saying that while she ends the live stream, we need to stay here. So the rest of
Okay.
you can go, and we need to sit and think about what we've done.
Only
Oh,
good
boy.
things.
I hope. Between 3 and 52 things.
Most of them good.
Yeah.
I'd
Many
say.
of them good. Some of them good.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say 12 to 9.
Sure.